The rain fell hard over Ouagadougou that night. Thunder crackled in the distance, as if nature itself sensed something dark was coming. In the depths of the AES Presidential Intelligence Command, a message arrived, encrypted, unsigned, and urgent. Its content was only 4 words. They will strike tonight. At first, the message was dismissed. Anonymous threats weren't new to President Ibrahim Traoré. Ever since he took Burkina Faso from the hands of France's influence and handed it back to the people, there had been constant attempts, economic sabotage, cyber attacks, and disinformation campaigns. But this was different. What followed was a second message, this time with video. A secret meeting recorded inside a luxury villa in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. 5 men speaking French, discussing logistics. He won't see it coming. It'll look like an accident. Traoré is too bold. We silence him, the rest collapse. We already paid the border generals. Their silence is guaranteed. Facial recognition AI in AES's cybersecurity network confirmed the worst. 2 were former Western ambassadors. 3 were African intelligence officials trained by foreign agencies. The plan was clear. Use mercenaries disguised as peacekeepers, strike during Traoré's inspection visit to a rural energy site, frame the attack as a local rebel ambush. But they had miscalculated one thing. President Traoré was already watching them. In a secured bunker beneath the presidential complex, Traoré's inner circle gathered. On the wall, a dossier of names: shadowy financiers, consultants, intelligence agents, and corporate intermediaries. 113 foreign officials linked by encrypted financial transfers, offshore bank logs, and asset trails from Dubai to Geneva. This isn't just an assassination attempt, said Colonel Karim Ouattara, head of AES counterintelligence. It's a global network of economic occupation, and they've now crossed the line. Traoré remained calm, his fingers steepled. If they believe Africa will bow when threatened, let them watch what we do when betrayed. And with that, Operation Iron Purge was activated. Within 24 hours, the central bank of the Sahel states froze over $1.7 billion USD in accounts tied to the suspects. Private jets were grounded. Diplomatic immunity was revoked. Embassies were raided. The world woke up to headlines they didn't expect. Traoré freezes. Foreign assets after assassination plot confirmed. 113 officials implicated in Pan-African coup network. Burkina Faso declares war on economic colonizers. And for the first time, the global elite saw their own weapons turned against them. By dawn, the list had been finalized. 113 names, politicians, bankers, diplomats, defense contractors, and ex-intelligence operatives, each tied by a web of financial transactions, encrypted communications, and private meetings with known coup architects. Many were high-profile. A French energy executive with mining rights in northern Burkina Faso, a former U.S. ambassador to Mali who now consulted for defense firms, a Belgian banker managing anonymous accounts in the Cayman Islands, a West African finance minister linked to over 200 million in illegal withdrawals, and yet, every single one had something in common. They had all wagered on Traoré's death, and they had all lost. Traoré's inner circle wasn't simply reacting, they were broadcasting. The AES Intelligence Council released an encrypted dossier titled ORION Files, Operation Reclaim Indigenous Order Now. Inside, every name was matched with satellite imagery of covert meetings, audio snippets from hacked comms, receipts for logistics funding paid to mercenary companies, banking trails from former colonial institutions. AES news outlets launched a synchronized media blitz, The Coup in Suits, Burkina Faso 24, Assassins with Passports, Radio Niger Freedom, Documents Don't Lie, AES News Grid. In one powerful broadcast, a military analyst broke it down clearly. This isn't just treason. This is foreign warfare dressed in diplomacy. And the African public responded. In Bamako, crowds surrounded the French consulate, holding up copies of the Orion Files. In Conakry, protesters renamed the central roundabout Traoré Place. In Dakar, street murals popped up overnight, showing Traoré holding scales of justice, each side weighed with gold bars and blood-stained documents. Meanwhile, several frozen officials scrambled. Emergency calls to European foreign ministries. Denials issued, fake alibis constructed, but it was too late. AES had triggered a financial war they were now winning, and then came the moment that changed the global economy. President Traoré ordered the unveiling of the African Sovereign Asset Shield, ASAS, a new blockchain-based security grid jointly developed by AES cybersecurity teams and African financial engineers. With it, AES could monitor real-time asset movement, freeze foreign funds with sovereign smart contracts, automatically redirect illicit transactions into national reconstruction trusts. As the first ASAS activation occurred, over $427 million in stolen funds were rerouted into Burkina Faso's national energy program, live on air. Traoré gave a short address. "They tried to kill me with bullets. We respond with banks. They tried to steal our future. We coded it back into our hands." And to those who believe Africa's silence is eternal, listen closely. The continent has just spoken. The crowd outside erupted. From underground bunkers to village huts, from university campuses to refugee camps, the message was clear. The plot had failed. The people had awoken. And Africa had seized the sword of its sovereignty. In Paris, Washington, and Brussels, panic spread like wildfire. Traoré's swift financial retaliation and release of the Orion files had caught the elite off guard. These weren't just symbolic moves, they were precise economic strikes that hit the lifeblood of foreign influence: money. Inside a luxury boardroom in the heart of Geneva, 12 men and women, bank executives, asset managers, and retired intelligence advisors sat in silence. One finally spoke. "If this AES asset shield spreads across more African nations, we lose leverage for the next 50 years. Another replied grimly, "Then we destabilize it, quietly." Within hours, the West launched Operation Eclipse, a coordinated effort to crash the AES financial system through sudden sanctions disguised as compliance violations, currency manipulation in external trading systems, mass withdrawal of foreign direct investment in infrastructure. Global media outlets, meanwhile, unleashed a smear campaign. Traoré's seizures unconstitutional, read the New York Herald. AES becoming a dictatorship, asked a BBC analyst. France 24 went further. Could a new terror bloc be emerging? But the narrative no longer worked because AES had prepared a counterblow. They released the Eclipse dossier, a compilation of leaked Western government memos that confirmed the exact tactics now in motion. The most damning document came from a NATO strategy unit. If Traoré survives, the AES model will spread. If it spreads, Western leverage collapses. Recommendation: destabilize internal economies before nationalist sentiment hardens. The people saw it all. In Accra, students hacked into billboards and aired the memo on public screens. In Lagos, churches and mosques preached about the economic war on Africa. In Kigali, software developers offered to help expand ASAS to other non-AES countries. And in Ouagadougou, President Traoré gave the speech that set the continent on fire. Standing before the National Assembly, he looked each delegate in the eye. They sent assassins, they sent bankers, now they send headlines, but here we stand, unmoved. We've proven that Africa doesn't need charity. Africa needs clarity, of ownership, of vision, and of purpose. He ended with a warning. If you send spies, we will find them. If you move money in the shadows, we will light the tunnels. From now on, Africa sees everything. The next day, 6 more countries requested to join AES as economic observers. The West had tried to scare Africa into submission, but they had only proven Traoré right. This was no longer a reaction. It was a revolution built on receipts. Just as President Traoré's actions sent shockwaves through international circles, another shock rippled from inside AES itself. Buried deep within the code of the African Sovereign Asset Shield, ASAS, a series of irregular access logs were discovered, unauthorized entry points traced to a foreign IP address, masked behind a regional AES terminal. AES CyberOps went into immediate lockdown. The logs revealed metadata from encrypted transmissions sent just hours before the Orion files went public, information that had only been accessible to 5 people in the entire alliance. The team traced the anomaly to a man known by his call sign, Commander Yao, a decorated logistics officer stationed at AES headquarters in Ouagadougou. He had fought beside Traoré, he had been trusted, but now he stood accused of funneling information to a multinational intelligence-sharing node linked to the EU and AFRICOM. When confronted, Commander Yao didn't resist. His only words were, "They offered us a way out, if we turned on the captain." He was taken away in silence. Traoré, informed minutes later, stared at the security footage for a long time. His expression didn't change. Then he said, We prepare for this, not because we expect it, but because we know the price of building something new. He walked into the AES war room, where the generals were waiting. No more shadows. From now on, every betrayal will be public. Every snake will be named. And just like that, a new initiative was born, Project Umbra. Umbra would become the first continent-wide intelligence transparency system, cataloging every known collaborator in colonial intelligence operations, every backdoor contract written by puppet leaders, and every African citizen surveilled or compromised under foreign-run digital programs. Within 72 hours, AES published a list of internal leaks, dozens of names of former allies now exposed as foreign informants. But it wasn't vengeance that made it powerful. It was transparency. AES offered every citizen the chance to read the betrayals for themselves, and the effect was nuclear. Young Africans took to the streets with signs that read, "We forgive, but we do not forget." Online, an art movement exploded. Digital murals depicted the last mask falling, with a suited figure turning into shattered glass, revealing a colonizer's face beneath. In Côte d'Ivoire, students painted entire campus walls with the names of exposed traitors under the banner, "Africa is not a game board." Traoré addressed the wave, calm but firm. "You will be tested. You will be tempted. But remember, this is not just about exposure. It is about renewal. We are not purging to punish. We are cutting away rot so the roots can breathe." And just like that, the betrayal designed to weaken the revolution only strengthened its core. Because now the people weren't just fighting for Traoré, they were guarding the revolution from within. It began quietly. An emergency meeting of the International Monetary Council was held behind closed doors in London. The agenda was brief but explosive. Stabilize Western investor confidence after AES retaliation measures. But outside that room, a different storm had already begun. Global markets noticed something strange. African nations linked to AES were not collapsing under sanctions. Instead, they were stabilizing faster than predicted. AES's digital financial firewall, ASACE, had blocked every attempt at forced capital flight. And then came the message from the Pan-African Bank of Sovereign Nations, newly inaugurated in Niamey. All debts linked to illegal colonial-era contracts are hereby suspended, effective immediately. That sentence rippled through the financial world like a tidal wave of defiance. At 9:42 a.m. GMT, 4 major Western banks froze all trading involving AES-linked bonds. At 10:08 a.m., their systems were hit with the largest digital protest in financial history. AES cyber units, supported by tech volunteers from South Africa, Kenya, and Tunisia, flooded servers with encrypted legal documents, the receipts of exploitation. They showed how African countries were still paying interest on independence, how resource royalties were locked in 100-year contracts, how African leaders were bribed to sell the future for palaces and protection. Then AES released the Debt Truth Ledger, an open-source map of every debt Africa owed, to whom, and under what circumstances. Millions of Africans downloaded it in the first 24 hours. TikTokers turned colonial contracts into animated skits. Poets turned IMF loan terms into verses. Graffiti appeared in Dakar. "We don't owe, we were robbed." And as for President Traoré, he sat before the Pan-African Economic Assembly and made it plain. If a man breaks into your house, eats your food, steals your gold, then offers you a loan to rebuild, do you call him a partner? No. You call him a thief with a flag. We will not repay lies. We will not reward betrayal. And we will not be held hostage by the contracts of our colonizers. The chamber erupted. Several leaders stood in unison. Guinea, Mali, Niger, Chad, then Angola, Congo, Brazzaville, even Ghana. Together they passed the Sankofa Declaration, Africa shall no longer be punished for reclaiming what was stolen. That day, something remarkable happened on the continent. Banks in Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey all paused for 1 hour, voluntarily. Customers didn't panic. They didn't protest. They stood outside silently, waiting, honoring the moment the chains of silent debt began to break. And when the doors reopened, the banks didn't just offer cash. They offered something far rarer: dignity. For months, whispers had circulated. Was AES hiding something bigger, something beyond currency, beyond contracts? Then, Traoré dropped the hammer. Standing before a press corps in the heart of Ouagadougou, with flags of the Sahel fluttering behind him, he pulled back a heavy black cloth from a steel case. Inside, 10 solid bars of refined gold, stamped with the AES seal, numbered dated, each traceable. This, he said, lifting one into view, was mined, processed, and secured by Africans, without a single foreign permit, without a single Western contract. The press froze. This is the reason they wanted me gone, not because I'm dangerous, because I proved that Africa doesn't need them. It never did. He then revealed the full plan. AES had quietly launched Project Mwali, a gold-backed digital reserve initiative. For the first time, African nations would trade using a pan-African token secured by real assets beneath African soil. The West was stunned. The IMF issued an urgent statement warning of currency destabilization. The World Bank labeled it premature monetary independence. The French finance minister declared it a threat to the global order. But the people of Africa, they didn't care. They saw those bars as something more than metal. They were proof that their wealth didn't need to leave the continent to be real. In Johannesburg, artists created a sculpture called The Weight of Freedom, casting Traoré's gold bars into the shape of a broken chain. In Nairobi, school children wrote essays titled, "What Would You Do with African Gold?" And in Dakar, thousands of protesters marched with handmade coins stamped with the AES crest. Some wore shirts that read, "Our minerals are not their bailout." AES began inviting African scientists and economists from across the diaspora to audit, track, and co-manage the reserves transparently. No secrets, no offshore gates, no ghost companies. The new Pan-African gold token, codenamed Sanko, began test circulation among trade blocs. Suddenly, oil was traded in Sanko. Cocoa and lithium followed. And when AES signed its first intercontinental resource deal with Southeast Asia, paid in Sanko, the headlines screamed, "The dollar just lost Africa." Inside the Pentagon, red alert briefings resumed. If Sanko gains legitimacy, we lose Africa forever. But the game had changed. Traoré hadn't just survived an assassination. He had flipped the board. No longer was Africa asking for fair terms. It was writing its own contracts. And instead of signatures from Paris or Washington, these new documents were signed with the blood, sweat, and brilliance of a continent that remembered its worth. As the world adjusted to the shock of Project Mwali and the rollout of the Sanko gold-backed currency, a final, desperate plan was put into motion in the shadows of Europe. It wasn't military, it wasn't economic, it was reputational. The strategy was simple. Destroy Traoré's image, collapse his legacy, make him radioactive. A coalition of think tanks, intelligence operatives, and corporate media consultants launched what they called Operation Veilfire. The plan involved fake human rights reports seeded through global NGOs' AI-generated testimonies from alleged political prisoners, leaked forgeries suggesting Traoré had diverted state funds to personal offshore accounts, photoshopped images of luxury mansions, private jets, and hidden children abroad. The Western media fell in line. Traoré's clean image, now under scrutiny, BBC, Burkina gold missing, Bloomberg, the rise and fall of a Sahel strongman. The Guardian. The goal was clear: erode the trust, crack the morale, sow doubt. But what Operation Veilfire didn't anticipate was the existence of the Sankofa Media Corps. Sankofa was a decentralized alliance of independent African journalists, archivists, whistleblowers, and digital activists created in secret months earlier under AES directive. Its mission: defend African truth in real time. And so, for every lie Veilfire published, Sankofa responded with GPS metadata, proving Traoré had never left Africa, live-streamed audits of government gold reserves, verified testimonies from AES staff showing no missing funds, AI debunking tools showing pixel distortions in doctored luxury images. Within 48 hours, Operation Veilfire collapsed. Not only did the African public reject the smear campaign, but Western audiences began to question their own media. On X, formerly Twitter, the hashtag #Traoré Truthstorm trended globally for 72 hours. The most viral post? A side-by-side comparison of a Western media headline versus reality. Headline: Burkina regime faces financial mismanagement crisis. Reality: photo of a barefoot Traoré visiting a village where new solar panels had just been installed, funded directly from AES-seized corrupt assets. Caption: no mansion, no offshore jet, just power to the people. Traoré addressed the attack in his now famous Thorns and Flowers speech. I am not perfect, I will make mistakes. But if they fear me, it is not because I am corrupt. It is because I cannot be bought. The West has spent centuries planting lies in African soil. But today the people are growing truth as thorns, and those thorns are now tearing through their empires. The crowd erupted, and when asked if he feared another assassination attempt, Traore smiled. Let them come. I am no longer one man. I am a million voices sharpened into one resolve. As Traore stood taller than ever, something rare and unstoppable began to sweep the continent. Not rebellion, but a coordinated awakening. In Addis Ababa, the African Union convened a special session, one unlike any before. No Western observers, no donor representatives, no colonial flags. Instead, the room was filled with grassroots leaders, AES economists, representatives of displaced communities, and, for the first time ever, young Pan-African delegates under the age of 30. They came not with suits and speeches, but with data, footage, code, and memory. Together, they unveiled a document called the Flame Doctrine. It had 3 simple pillars. No nation shall be forced to choose between peace and sovereignty. No resource shall be extracted without equal reinvestment into its people. No leader who betrays Africa shall be shielded by foreign immunity. The applause was thunderous. AES ratified the doctrine immediately. Soon after, Senegal, Ghana, Tanzania, and even parts of North Africa began negotiations to adopt portions of it. But more importantly, people moved. In Ethiopia, students built an open-source website mapping every colonial treaty ever signed in Africa. In Nigeria, tech hubs launched crowdfunding campaigns for African-owned AI development. In the Congo, entire villages boycotted corporations that refused to renegotiate land rights under the new flame principles. And then came the moment no one expected, the flame flag. A new banner, unofficial but embraced across the continent, black, green, and gold, with a phoenix rising from broken chains at its center. It appeared on murals, shirts, social media avatars, and even military patches. When asked if AES would adopt it, Traore said, "The flame is not a government. It is not a party. It is a heartbeat. A reminder that even when they try to bury us in mines, lies, and chains, Africa will still rise and burn brighter." Then, in a symbolic move, AES launched the Flame Torch Relay, a ceremonial journey across 30 African cities where young people carried a torch lit in Ouagadougou all the way to Cape Town. In each city, they paused to read the names of the 113 officials who once conspired to end this dream. Now those names were no longer feared. They were remembered, not as victors, but as warnings. Across the world, headlines changed. Africa no longer waiting, it's leading. Pan-African unity moves from idea to institution. Flame Doctrine challenges global colonial legacy. In a single month, 3 Western-backed presidents resigned under pressure. And in Paris, a leaked memo from the Foreign Ministry read, "We have underestimated Traoré, and now we are watching the fire he lit consume everything we once controlled." But it wasn't just Traoré anymore. It was a continent no longer afraid of its voice. The 113 foreign officials who had plotted Traoré's death had once seemed untouchable, shielded by borders, passports, and power. But the continent had shifted. What began as a frozen asset list had evolved into an international reckoning. AES and the Sankofa Media Corps launched a new phase of exposure. The Architect's Files. Each file named a conspirator and detailed their role in the assassination plot. Financial ties to extractive industries, links to destabilization campaigns in Africa, secret meetings with intelligence contractors or mercenaries. Every document was authenticated with blockchain timestamps. Every testimony was cross-referenced, every name broadcast across the continent. And then something historic happened. For the first time, the African Court on Justice and Sovereignty was convened in Addis Ababa to begin proceedings against former foreign ministers, energy lobbyists, retired military advisors, intelligence liaisons working through NGOs. The West scoffed. They called it symbolic. They called it unenforceable. But the impact was real. 3 European politicians resigned under pressure. A Swiss bank lost 17% of its African assets in 1 week. A former CIA official was denied entry into Kenya after being placed on the AES sanction list. Traoré addressed the world. "We are not chasing revenge. We are building memory into law. These men were never ghosts. They had faces, they had hands, and they will be remembered not for what they did to us, but for what they could not stop us from becoming." Around Africa, statues began to appear, but not of leaders, of whistleblowers, of revolutionaries forgotten, of farmers who resisted land seizures, of women who uncovered corruption, of children who grew up in war and chose peace. One statue outside the courthouse in Addis was titled, "Unburied Truth." It depicted a hand reaching out from beneath chains, holding a scroll that read, "We know your names." In a powerful gesture, Traoré made one final announcement. "We have built our courts, we have exposed the guilty, but we offer them one option: public apology, full confession, and return what you stole." AES opened a platform called Return and Reveal, offering whistleblowers and foreign conspirators a final chance to upload full disclosures, return assets, testify before the Pan-African Assembly. Surprisingly, dozens responded. Some did so to avoid prosecution. Some did so to preserve legacy, but others did so because they finally realized the truth. Africa had changed, and the old tricks would never work again. The morning was still. A warm breeze swept through the open square of Unity Hall, where delegates, elders, youth leaders, and millions online awaited the words that would close a chapter the world would never forget. The flame doctrine had spread. The gold-backed Sanko currency was stabilizing. The coup architects were being judged. The betrayals had been named and forgiven. Now, the world watched to see what President Ibrahim Traoré would say. He stepped forward, not flanked by guards or generals, but by school children from every AES nation, each holding a book. As cameras zoomed in, the books bore a single title: "The Day Africa Said No." Traoré's voice was calm, firm, historic. "They thought assassinating me would break us. They thought freezing our banks would starve us. They thought smearing our name would silence us. But instead, we exposed them. We reconnected, and we remembered who we were before they renamed us." He raised a golden scroll, engraved with the signatures of 37 African nations and diaspora organizations. "This is the Declaration of African Sovereign Memory. We declare that every child born today will never again carry the debts of invaders, that no soil shall be mined without justice, that no man, however powerful, may hide behind lies stitched by foreign hands." The square was silent. Every screen paused. Every timeline froze. Then came the moment that would echo through generations. Traoré turned and knelt before a massive sculpture unveiled behind him. A lion breaking through chains, mouth open in a defiant roar, and beneath it, 113 broken masks. He placed a torch at the base and stood. "We are not anti-West, we are anti-submission. If you respect our sovereignty, we'll welcome your friendship. But if you come to dominate, be warned, Africa has found her teeth, and they are sharp with memory." The crowd erupted. Drums, cheers, tears. All across the continent, cities held flame vigils. Children recited the flame doctrine in schools. The AES flag was painted on rooftops. And for the first time in modern history, the continent stood unbroken. Across the oceans, in war rooms and embassies, analysts rewrote their assessments. Traoré is not a revolutionary anymore. He is a transition point in human history. And so, the story ends not with vengeance, but with vision. Not with trauma, but with testimony. Not with death, but with the birth of a future where Africa decides for itself. Because the day they tried to kill Traoré, they didn't bury a man. They awakened a continent.